What is happening? Welcome to another episode of The Craft. My name is Nick Pollack, and this week's guest, you might have heard him on MLB Network or in a commercial with Pudge Rodriguez. His name is Eno Sarris. Eno! Oh, it's so great to have you back on the show.
Got my Sax underwear on right now.
That was one of the coolest things, I gotta say, man. I was so thrilled seeing you do that. I'm sure it was a fun time having that photo shoot and everything with him.
Yeah, it was totally fun.
The face game, face play. There it is. That's the word. It was fantastic.
He was great. He was a really nice dude. It was really a fun time.
That's awesome. All right. Well, this week we're not going to talk about the fun times. We're going to talk about the rough times because I think this is the toughest thing that we do every year. Is we get excited about certain pitchers and they show us something really fun at first, then it might go away for a moment, and it's so difficult for us to discern, was that a fluke before, or was that just a hot moment and they are going and this is who they really are? Or is it the reverse where they have some great things, they lose it for a moment and they're going to get it back? And there are a lot of these right now. And this is, for fantasy rankings, it's like my 50s or so of, hey, this is cool, but am I too high on this or too low? Should I be holding on to this and going for something a little bit safer? And we have a slew of them. So the first one actually is someone who pitched last night. And it was against arguably one of the worst teams we've ever seen in Colorado. It's Jackson JOBE against the Rockies. And the last two games, we've talked a lot about JOBE on this podcast, but it's starting to get a feeling of maybe this won't actually come to fruition as soon as we want it to. Where are you on JOBE right now, Eno?
Yeah, I'm gonna throw that one out. I've gotten that before with somebody I liked, and he's doing terribly, and I'm like, well, he just faced Houston and was at Colorado, so I'm gonna give him a little bit of a pass on the immediate surroundings. I have seen some analysis from the guys actually, that was about Bobby Miller, but I wonder if it's true about Jackson JOBE. Which is the guys at Baseball Prospectus we're talking about, like, do his pitches, function well together?
Sure. Right.
Much as, does the stuff model like each of them by themselves? And is he sort of struggling to figure out how to put them together? Even there, it's kind of hard because, Colorado screws with your pitch mix so much.
Right.
But I do see, if you take Colorado out, more sinkers, as the game goes on, as the season goes on, fewer changeups, more sliders.
I mean, that last two games he's really leaned into it. Jackson JOBE, even I think the previous one was over 40% usage with his slider, which is, I think, really good. It's by far his best pitch in my view.
Yeah, I think he's headed in the right direction, and I'm holding on Jackson JOBE. I do share the same consternation where you look at his numbers and you say 110 stuff plus, and you even look at 97 mile an hour fastball with like interesting shape, and you're like, why does he have a 16% strikeout rate? And even in the high minors, like 25% in the minor leagues last year as a strikeout rate, which is good. It's above average, but most of, like, Bubba Chandler has like a 37.
Yeah. Right.
So, there is some worry that this will turn into somebody, Oopsie has stuff plus in it and still only gives him a 21% strikeout rate, which is the highest of all the strikeout rates he's projected for, and is also below league average.
Yeah, right.
So there's a fair amount of risk here. The way I would treat, probably this is going to be a theme here. There may not be true for every single one, but I'm just going to be comfortable with his out. I'm going to be careful with his outings. I'm going to be careful with his outings and not play him every time. So let's check out the probables grid.
Oh, baby. So the next ones he gets is hosting the Red Sox and then going to Toronto.
And I hate, hosting the Red Sox is nice because it's home at least.
Right. It's not in Fenway. I think that's okay. We've seen Boston.
And I think at Toronto is fine. I had a numbers you worry about a piece that came out, and they are worse than the big leagues at pitches down the heart of the plate. So like and they chase more than most than like 27 teams. So it's like they don't know when to swing, and
oh no,
it's a decent
but wait, I
time to
thought
look
they
at Blue
got rid
Jays
of
right
Kevin
now.
Biggio.
Oh,
okay, but yeah, the Jays are not doing the things you want them to do as an offense, which means that
yeah.
you should be okay with Joe with it. One of the things that I've been at least been positive about with Job is that I haven't expected him to just show up and be great. It was more of, hey, this is going to be a process. I think that someone that has the tools and has to figure out exactly how to use them appropriately and really learn how to pitch with it. And I think over the time, it will be there. I think that slider is just too good. I think throws hard enough, and it's not so, it's not like complete empty velocity, and also has a decent capability for command. That is, when he's attacking batters, there is a game plan that you can track just by watching him, as opposed to a lot of guys where I just see a glove. I'm like, I don't know, was that supposed to be down? Was that supposed to be over here? Like, you can actually see Job try to work an at bat properly, right? I feel like that's a very important threshold for rookie pitchers, particularly to see like how can you develop from here.
I wonder if there's a better question, better posed at the end of this, but let's pose it now and see where it goes. Is, I think about Jackson Jobe, and I think about ROKI Sasaki, and I think about obviously Paul Skeens, but Paul Skeens is a 1-1,
right?
I think you can take Casey Mize is a 1-1, so you can't. Let's leave Paul Skeens in. Are you comfortable losing a shot at Paul Skeens if it means being right on more rookies and sort of generally waiting for the rookies to prove it, sort of deal? Like I had Jackson Jobe 86 going into the season. He didn't have a job yet. Right. And then in my last ranking, I was at 61, mostly reflected that he has a job. It's in a nice park. I would like to start him probably about half the time. That's what a 61 means for me. I feel like that's being cautious. Now with Sasaki, I guess the hype got to me, and we had some crazy projections on him. So I had him 20 going into the season. It's probably not a ranking that caused a lot of people to draft him based on what I had him, but maybe it was. He dropped so hardcore once I started getting the early stuff numbers down to 77.
77 stuff.
No, 77.
Oh, that was the rank. Okay.
Ranking.
Yeah. But I mean, even
90 stuff.
Yeah,
90 stuff's not good.
Yeah.
So I just wonder, like, should we be super cautious about rookie starters? My contention is yes, we should be careful, because they can have all the pieces like Jackson Jobe and just not put it together just right away.
I mean, Derek Carty is just smiling and nodding from afar.
Oh yeah, Carty's. Yeah, I've been telling y'all.
I'll put it this way. I think I think actually it was like November, I had Sasaki really high up because I'm just like, well, yeah, this is like a Yamamoto kind of thing again.
Yeah.
And then I found out a little bit more about him, I think from the spring, and I pushed him down further, just saying, hey, he'd be baby too much. He needs a third option. The four-seamer doesn't miss bats, but it still should be good. And ever since then, I've just realized that it's been worse.
It's been
but
going.
Yeah, Sasaki's a little different. I think generally when you have these big NPB players coming over, it's a more polished pitcher normally than it is a rookie. So I'm mentally gonna move away from that one and think more about like chasing the Bobby Miller rookie season or the Skeens season, right? And
like what happens with Bubba Carpenter this year?
Bubba Carpenter, Bubba Chandler. But I thought there was another guy named Carpenter. I would have loved you to call him that. Okay,
no name named Bubba.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm getting at is for a 12-teamer, I think I'm still going to be reasonably aggressive, because the burn and churn is a very big thing that I will always say you should be doing. That's my philosophy.
Could be great. It could be Paul Skeens.
There for it. Right, but like even Jared Jones last year, you were happy you got Jared Jones.
That's true.
You were also happy with Spencer Schwallenbach taking the chance at him when he first came up too, right? You're going to get burned along the way. I am more of the feeling of if you wait too long and they haven't figured it out, if they haven't if they're not really doing it right away, I think you can kind of leave it, and it's a lower chance for them to show up and be amazing after that, if that
Drop
makes sense.
Jackson Jobe is what you just said.
Right. It's kind of what I'm leaning toward a little. It's
Yeah.
always a question of what you have to replace with. You know, I get a lot of those questions. Should I drop this guy or should I add this guy? It's like, well, what is the replacement? What are the other options? What are you dropping for? What are you adding for? I would say Jackson Jobe in a month from now is better than Jackson Jobe now. And I'm with you in that I think you do stick with him, but I am realizing the ceiling is lower than I initially intended, or at least believed it would be, especially spring of 2024. My gosh, I was so enamored. And I don't know if we can really ever get to that 30% strikeout rate that we really want to see for Jackson Jobe, right? We think this overpowering guy, just because the four seamer and the sinker are going, batters are chasing after that and they're making contact with it. They're not failing to do so. And that's the big worry and red flag for me, is that he can't eclipse like a 20% CSW on these fastballs and sinkers. I don't know how he corrects that. We talked about that in a previous podcast. But that to me is the sign of like, no, it's not just execute this pitch once or twice and you're good. Like there's something fundamental about it that is making it more difficult. I would still have him at the moment for the early schedule, but I'm not going to just still hold on, or if it's like tepid or whatever, then it's just like, I'm going to probably move on from that one. But in general, the concept of rookies, I'm going to be aggressive if I see the minor league data that favors amazing four seamers and generally not walking everybody. That's how I see it.
I think there's a name right next to him that is pretty interesting, and in terms of Yahoo ownership. I'm looking around and like, it's Jackson Jobe at 43% and then Brayan Bello at 42%.
Oh, Bello is a mystery.
Ranger Suarez at 40%.
Clubhouse, like the show, that they were just like, how does Bello attack? Like, we just want him to attack, and he still doesn't. He's very passive of throwing strikes when he should be throwing strikes, Brayan Bello, which is why I see multiple starts where it's like the sinker, changeup, slider. You get two of those working. It's not just because if he gets lefties or righties in a game. It's just like, pick two, Bello. Which one do you want?
Yeah.
I think
it's hard. It's hard for him to be on both sides of the ball. Like he kind of either has the changeup or he has the slider, and he kind of doesn't have both at the same time.
And it's what makes him inefficient. And we're doing more stuff on the efficiency stuff that I think we mentioned last episode. You'll be seeing something about that down the road, about non-competitive pitches and the influence of those and who identifies as good at preventing them. But I would imagine that Bello is not a highly rated efficient pitcher on when we do put out that article, because it's frustrating to watch him at times.
I don't think that's an obvious switch I would make. And you can even see 12 strikeouts and 17.2 innings so far. He's not going to be a big strikeout guy for you. So you're not being like, oh, I'll pick up Bello and at least he'll give me strikeouts where Jobe didn't. Clark Schmidt's stuff is down a little bit. He's right there.
Yeah.
Ranger Suarez, his stuff was
Suarez is interesting. I probably would lean him.
You would probably take him out of the
I mean, at least over Schmidt and Bello.
David Peterson is right there.
So Peterson, I really like. Do you like David Peterson?
I have not for forever, but I've been trying to figure out how he even does it, because there's not really something you can point to and be like, oh, it is this. And I'm in a discussion right now with Matt Eddy.
Maybe answer that. I have an idea.
Matt Eddy from from Baseball Prospectus we just had a little mini David Peterson discussion, and he was like, it's a good slider. He doesn't give in. He has a little bit of that Snellian, like, fine, I'll walk you. He has enough of a ground ball rate where he can be like, fine, I'll walk you, and I get a double play after that.
Sure.
He's a little bit of the Cueto, like, I've got a great lefty move. Like I'll keep the running game, you won't steal second on me, basically.
Sure.
So like, there's a lot of like kind of intangible stuff that's not obvious. I think honestly, also there's some home park, help there. It's all the Mets have better numbers because of that park. And and he's a lefty. You know, that was one thing that Eddie was saying, is that he kind of is predisposed towards lefties because there's just fewer of them. The hitters get to see them less often. There's going to be some nice lefty only hitters that are out of the lineup against him. You know, like, you know, say what you want about Max Kepler, but like, you know, probably the Phillies lineup is worse when he's not in it. You know, so there's ways that just being a lefty can help you beyond things that we've hopefully fixed in our models. But there's still like the lefty move to first base is still a thing.
Sure. Which, by the way, unpopular baseball opinion, I think that should be banned.
It's like a balk every time.
I think literally you should have to get your back foot off the rubber for everybody.
I don't know. I don't know. The 45-degree angle thing is like,
it drives me.
How are you supposed to see that? Like, it's not even like, neither the home or the first base guy has a really good sense of where 45 degrees is.
You know, and I just think it's so dumb. Just stop that completely. Make them take their back foot off. You know, I hate that there's this like inherent benefit for righties versus
lefties get to lefties get to balk and righties don't.
It doesn't seem. I hate that. I've always hated that. But no, about David Peterson, this is something that maybe is just a bias that I need to correct for myself. But I will always give a little bit of a potential for success to pitchers who have 7 feet of extension. You're able to. I mean, that to me just says you're lowering so you're making the tunnel harder to pick up, right? You're just getting a later date,
lowering the response time
spot, right? So when you have that, it squeezes more out of everything because of it. Especially if you have fastballs and sinkers, four seamers and sinkers inside the zone with it, and then you have the slider and then change up off of it. And I think it just inherently makes a better potential for success on a given night. And it's kind of why I'll always say that Bailey Falter one day will get traded to some team that like the Rays, and all of a sudden we're like, oh, Bailey Falter, oh my gosh, how's he doing this? Because he's like a 7.2 extension guy. It's how Joey Cantillo had his success, right? He's like a 7.4 guy with a really good changeup off of that fastball. Bailey Ober, that's how he survives at 90 and change. So I see that from David Peterson, and then I see, he gets a lot of swing strike on both the changeup and the slider. As long as those are down, he does the Blake Snell blueprint, four seamers and sinkers, more elevated, and so that's how he works. The problem is that he's never, kind of like Bello, it's rare to see everything working, and it drives me nuts. Like, I know you want it to be working too, David Peterson. I just want the best for you, man. I just want you to do that. So I think that's why I lean more in David Peterson than say Bello or I don't remember who the other one was.
Ranger Suarez
and Clarke Schmidt, because I do see that threshold, I think, or that bar is a little bit higher with him.
I thought Clarke had gotten to the point like David Peterson where he'd kind of dialed in his approach and knew who he was, but
I don't think he has good enough command. Honestly, I think that's the thing about him, is that he just doesn't always. It's like it was cutters and curves, and then sinkers and sweepers, right?
Yeah,
and some cutters to right-handers, but it's always just like he's always battling himself so much every game. And it drives me up.
The mechanics are a little bit weird for me because he's so hunched over, and I know that he's trying to stay more stacked, but I also know that that's something that the rest of the league really wants, is to stay stacked and to be vertical through to the plate. And his whole like starting position is like kind of hunched. He has this little like he's got this thing, you know. Is that
what Roy Halladay did? I'm trying to think of the person who used to do that too.
I don't know.
Wasn't not Roy? There's someone else.
It looks like he's trying to be athletic and like stay on the tips of his toes. And you know, I guess there's a pitcher once told me that like there are pitchers that are more in their toes and pitchers are more in their heels.
That's interesting.
Clarke is like definitely more in his toes, and I think that costs you in a bunch of different ways. Apparently, landing on your heel engages your glute, your ass muscles more, and can actually give you velo. That's a big Wes Johnson thing. So,
that's always been a big thing about also like, do you land open or land closed and spin open?
And that's probably heel or toe variable,
right? Too, I would imagine landing open is more on your toe than while the heel and spin open. And I actually was just watching this prospect. He's thrown 100 from the left side, Blake something on the Red Sox. I should know this. It was only this morning, And I was actually watching his mechanics with the morning stream, and he's very much of like, I land the foot and then twist everything, as opposed to kind of opening up at the same time, which is actually, I think, a lot of a lefty thing. I think of like Madison Bumgarner doing that, like the big turn, the big open, you know, step close, turn open.
Richard Fitz?
Richard Fitz. No. Red Sox guy? You
What
asking
did you
who I'm-
say? Yeah.
It's like Blake something is in high
Oh,
A.
Blake.
Oh my gosh. I really should just have this in front of me. This is embarrassing, guys. But he throws 100, and he's had these absurd starts so far in high A this year. He was a 5th round pick for the Red Sox last year in 2024. But he looks great. Terrible camera angles, no data, but I can just tell you that it's a filthy breaking ball also off of that, 2 of them.
Blake Holub or Wyman?
Yeah. Wait, say them again?
Holub?
And?
Wyman?
No, not Wyman. It's Holub, I guess. I don't think it's Wyman. I don't know. He was awesome. Go find the guy that threw 100. Was drafted 5th overall, 5th round by the Red Sox in 2024. But that's the whole point of like the heel toe stuff. You can kind of see that whip. And I'm always not. I'm more in on the. I feel like I'm on the toe side, because the heel one just feels like you're not getting out as far as you can, while the toe one means that you're not stopping and going and like keeping it back. Like, and then moving it forward. It's like the toe one is everything still continuously going forward. That's at least how I see it in my head. I could be completely wrong about that. But
if you are hunched over, if you are on your toes at the beginning of everything,
right,
and you are more hunched over the front of your body, then that does create some trunk, like hip issues, hip trunk, like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
People really like, one of the big things that Tarek Skubal did was like stay more stacked, stay more vertical through it.
So this is Brandon Clarke, by the way. That was the name. I'm so sorry, everybody.
Clarke, okay.
And I already realized I should not trust him because he has 2 first names. I'm really sorry. So, I can't do it. I just can't do it. Chad Patrick, I'm so sorry. I know you have some nice cutters and stuff. Just can't do it, Chad. 2 first names. I do want to move on though to some other guys like Gavin Williams and our boy Landon ROUP and Dustin May and so on and so forth. We're going to talk about all of them after this break. So Gavin Williams, once again, we're just like, what do we do?
You know that these 2 that you just teased have something in common. They were on a top 15 list that has something to do with the news I broke last week. Can you guess what that is?
I don't know news last week. I'm just saying Landon ROUP and Dustin May both are a sinker breaking ball for the most part from the right side.
Well, Gavin Williams and Landon ROUP were both on most squeezed pitchers this year.
Yes, that's right.
Most called balls inside the strike zone. And I looked at where called balls live inside the strike zone, and they live where I reported last week that the zone has tightened. And that they changed the buffer zone for umpires from 2 inches around the strike zone on each side to 0.75 inches. So
that's a huge difference.
They reduced the buffer zone by 60%, which means like when you change the buffer zone for how they're judged, of course, you are basically in fact changing the strike zone because you're changing their incentives. You're changing how they, what they're going to do. We've seen this throughout history. When they had Questek, the umpire zone got smaller. When they got to TrackMan, the zone got smaller. So this, I think you can effectively say, is the smallest zone of all time. And it's gotten smallest around the corners. And I think that's just because, umpires, it's hard to see a straight line in the air coming off the plate. And so umpires have a little bit better sense of what is too tall and what is too short because they have the player as a guide.
Right.
And so what you get functionally out of an umpire zone is a circle. I mean, you've seen this probably. If you've seen the strike zone as a probabilistic function, it's a circle. And so when you tighten that circle, where it's going to become the hardest is the corners. Those tighten in. And so when I looked at balls, the strikes called balls, they were all in the corners and disproportionately the lower corners. And so what I found was curveball and sinker guys, to some extent, throw there. And there
Oh,
were a
that's so interesting, and that's
fair
really
amount of
happened.
curveball and sinker guys that were being squeezed. I've
Mm,
watched a fair amount of Landon Roop starts, and I would say that he has gotten squeezed
mhm.
on those pitches. Now, I don't know what that means going forward. You know, to me, Landon Roop still has like an elite breaking ball, a good sinker, and I think a good enough cutter and change for lefties. It has something in common with Clarke Schmidt, but it seems a little bit more refined. And I think he has a slightly better command
Mhm.
than Clarke Schmidt. So I think he's going to come out of this. And right now, I see him as eminently startable at home and even more startable on the road than he appears. And I think he's going to come out of it. But you know, they do take him out pretty early. They do have a short leash with him, and he is being squeezed. And it isn't an arsenal where I can say this checks all the boxes and don't
Right,
worry about anything.
right.
There's definitely he's going to have some days where he's struggling against lefties.
So, you know what's funny? It reminded me of something. With Landon Roop's sinker, he's been getting a ton of horizontal movement at times with it. And I mean, we saw 20 inches worth in San Diego at the end of April. And then I remember the same day was Michael King getting so much horizontal movement as well.
Wind.
And then yeah, I asked him yesterday. I was like, "Hey guys, is the wind different or something in San Diego? Is there something going on when they were tracking?" He goes, "Oh yeah, the wind has just been, I don't know, something changed in the stadium, but the lateral wind is just way different right
That's the
now."
most sinker movement he had all season.
And you can see it with Michael King as well. Him in San Diego, his sinker movement is insane. So that's something
And look at
interesting.
that. That was one of his worst walk rate games too.
And I imagine, yeah, that doesn't surprise me too much because those sinkers inside went a little too far. Yeah, hearing Kate Povich mention like, "Oh yeah, the best sweeper I threw laterally." Well, I tried to backdoor it to Judge, but then it just went too far, and then I let a home run.
Oh man.
And it's kind of interesting. We really praise movement, but we should be praising consistent movement because the
Yeah.
pitchers can't locate it if it's moving differently all of a sudden. Which is an interesting thought in that.
I had a conversation with Max Bay once that I wanted to study the standard deviation of pitch movement, and that could be a measure of command in a way.
Mhm.
It was interesting because it
Absolutely.
was like one of those times where he was just like, no. And I was like, what? He's like, what are you predisposing? What are you saying here? What do you think is going on here? And I'm
The
like,
smaller
that a
deviation means
pitcher
you're gonna
who
need more
can
command, more
that
consistent.
that a pitcher that can like repeat his shapes is going to have more command. That's what I'm saying,
Yeah, right.
But he I don't know. He didn't seem to
Oh, so he
buy
didn't,
it.
like, run it at
He
all
never
until you.
ran it, and he wasn't interested.
That's so
You
funny.
run into that with you. Like I'm sure there's been a time where Kyle's been like, no, I'm not doing that.
Well, no, it's not that, it's that he still does it, and he goes, "Yeah, Nick, there's nothing here."
Yeah, right.
I'm
I
like, "Well,
think
anyway,
I
thanks a lot,
knew.
man." I mean, that was a lot
But
with
I mean, like
doing
if
I
you
did a
look
lot
at
of
Gavin Williams
exploration.
too.
What's that? Oh, Gavin Williams, yeah, please.
Well, if you look at Gavin Williams too, he had 40/50 future command grades coming up, which is sort of borderline. But he had a 9.6% walk rate last year, 10.7 in 2023. The minor leagues never really had bad walk rates, never really had really good ones. So I guess, I think part of the story here is being slightly squeezed is going to make somebody who has slightly good command, hurt a little bit.
Right. Well,
And then the other
yeah,
thing
this is
is I
always
think
the
the
tough thing that I
cutter's
think we
coming
do.
in, and I believe the cutter will be a big deal. And I'm still in. It's still a
Well,
really good curveball. The velocity's there.
that's the thing. Okay, so this is the
And you like
conversation
guys
I
with
have a lot.
extension.
Yeah, I know. He's an extension boy. This is why I
Yeah.
love Gavin Williams. He's an extension boy with 97-mile-per-hour four-seamers that is an unbelievable floor of what should be of quality, and then you just need consistent strike pitches underneath it. And this is kind of my mentality a lot that I understand can conflict a lot with others who are like, okay, this is the projection of him, this is who he is, and that's this kind of thing. And I think what is so hard for us is to recognize, all right, this guy is going through this period. However, how easy is it for him to not be that guy, to be a different one, to be something that has a different result? And a lot of them, it's just like, well, I don't understand what you just need to have a brand new pitch, or you need to have a, completely change what you do. And then it's like, well, yeah, we don't like that guy. Right.
Right.
But I think a really good example is Robbie Ray, where the beginning of the season, the walk rates looked like it did before he had his
He was on the
major
most squeezed
breakout.
list too.
Right. Oh, sorry.
He was on the most squeezed list too.
Oh,
All
is
those
he really?
sliders
Oh,
to the
that's
bottom
weird,
corners.
actually.
Yeah.
That's actually very strange. But about Robbie Ray, though, is the walk rate to me is actually very understood, because his approach early in the season was just like, hey, I'm just going to throw fastballs all the time.
Yeah.
And then I'm not really going to turn to my slider or changeup or curveball, and they're not going to get strikes. And you can just say, well, hold on. He used to throw a lot of sliders for strikes and also have this curveball that would get him for strikes. And maybe that changeup helps, but really those
you could
things
say
come back.
he could start doing what he used to do and he'll be better.
Right.
And that's sort
It's
of
like,
what he
well, what
ended
is
up
the
doing.
thing that would make him better? Is it just be better? Or is it, hey, it's pretty logical that this guy is going to go back to the slider that he used to have a little bit more than like 70% four seamers, which is just an anomaly. And that's what Robbie Ray has done, right? And all of a sudden now the walk rates are more in line with what we wanted to see the last 3 games from him. And
That's
so I
pretty
look
funny.
at Gavin Williams, it's the
I
same
talked
kind of
to-
idea.
I was talking to a group of Giants pitchers late April, and I said Justin Verlander was saying that he thinks we should just legislate it, and starting pitchers have to throw 100 pitches, and we can put in, that's the rule. And he says we can put in things like, oh, if you're injured, or if it's like the 9th inning and it's closer than 2 runs, or throws
you
them
throw
through
over
like
30 in an inning,
like a save situation, or 35 in an inning, or they have all these rules. But basically the rule is you're a starting pitcher, you have to throw 100 unless something else has gone terribly awry. I don't like it, but I was admitting that there is a precedent for this rule, which is the three batter minimum.
Yeah.
So it's not like we've never done this before. The 3 batter minimum did have some success in reducing the amount of times we have to wait through a pitching change. And it didn't really screw large portions of, like, there are still kind of loogie-esque pitchers that managers are just like, oh, there's 2 lefties here and I'll use them to end the inning. There's still ways to use a loogie. For anybody who's listening who doesn't know what a loogie is, a lefty 1-out guy. Loogie. So anyway, so we were talking about the game, and I was like, well, what about the fact that sometimes the game polices itself, and there are like analytical findings that we're now incorporating into our best practices in front offices that will lead to more length out of your relievers. And my examples were Louis Polis wrote a piece saying that like every pitch your starter throws today lowers the bullpen ERA tomorrow. And so I was like, that's a finding that says I need to get more out of my starting pitcher today. I was also like, in that finding, he found that people are leaving they're taking their stars out too early, according to him, by analytics. So it's like, okay, it's not just like some crank, yelling at crowds.
Right.
This is like a former R&D guy for the Phillies saying, look, I can prove it. You're leaving them, you're taking them out too fast. And then I was like, the other finding that's been around for a while that people are using more of is that any pitch you throw, any new pitch type you throw, reduces your third time through the order penalty. Like it doesn't have to be good. You just throw it, and it reduces your third time through the order.
It's kind of like AJ Smith-Shawver throwing whatever the heck that splitter was.
Which now is become like an actual thing for him, I think. But
when did you know what I'm talking about though, right? Like
the
vertical break splitter that had more vertical break than his four seamer at times.
Oh no, that might be like
oh my gosh,
change thing he's doing.
Maybe
he's throwing a straight change and a splitter.
I'm going to send it to you, the image of this from our app, and it's
because his normal splitter has like wicked sideways movement.
Well, it's just like 2 different groupings. Like I'm calling it the butterfly splitter.
Maybe it's a straight change.
What is it? What is life? I love the thing about 100 pitches, by the way, that Verlander suggesting that.
Oh,
and
I'm
like actually, I'm so into. I've always said like you have to force a 6-man rotation, and if whoever starts that game can't pitch until the 7 days later, or like the 7th game. So they literally have to, and that's pretty much how you manage it. Is just you literally need innings out of those guys, otherwise it's wasted.
I'm just pointing out that I brought up the thing that if you throw your more pitches, you can stay in the game longer, and I brought that up in front of Robbie Ray. So we can all give me the praise.
Oh man,
it's my fault that Robbie Ray is better. So
it's your fault.
Thank you very much.
First of all, thank you. I didn't know you were going to do such a thing. And
yes, you were a little bit nervous. You have to admit.
I would have been.
No, I mean you would have been. You were a little bit nervous about your Robbie Ray picks.
No,
never.
This was so weird, and I got so many people on Reddit yelling at me, being like, "How dare you?"
Now he has a 2 ERA,
I have at like 2.28 still. I'm like, he's not this. This is so stupid. He's just gonna throw more sliders and he'll be fine. And everyone just kept yelling at me. But I do want to show. I'm gonna put this on the screen right now, guys. It's very small. My gosh, that is terrifyingly small.
Oh, that is weird.
But you
all
will
over
be able
the place.
to see.
He has like a flat splitter. He's like a.
Yeah, I can look at this. Do you see this thing?
See, my guess is that that's a straight change. He throws a straight change and a splitter. That's be my guess.
No.
Or a 2-seam and a 4-seam variation. Like there's a grip.
These are sub 1,000 RPM pitches.
Maybe it's a grip variation, like a 2-seam.
I don't know.
4-seam splitter.
Just the fact that we have 4-seamers that are lower vert than these blows my mind.
Even though it has like no spin at all.
And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because it's in the context of of us saying, "Hey, you should be, throwing multiple pitches, like messing guys up, right?" Like that makes sense to me, because if you throw something random like that, they go, "What? Okay, I guess I gotta be aware of that thing." And then, okay, no, we're normally back to the fastball now. I absolutely am with you there. I'm happy Robbie Ray's throwing more of those pitches. It's a good thing. And going all the way back full circle to Gavin Williams. Gavin Williams having this low walk rate, this high walk rate, and we go, well, okay, this is who he is, I guess, because of all these, all the years or whatever. We say, well, 4-seamer is actually a really, really good strike pitch. Even with it being squeezed, it's still easily above 60%. You generally aim for like 65% to be like, okay, cool. He can easily flirt with 70% on that 4-seamer. That's great. It's just the fact that the curve and the slide or sweeper really are like 50% strike pitches. And
that's why the cutter matters.
And that's why the cutter matters exactly. But he hasn't thrown it much. It's like 4 of them in a game or so.
Yeah.
And the one amazing game that Gavin Williams had, both the curve and the sweeper were like 65 to 70% strikes. And it's like, okay, you introduced it, but you didn't need it. So then when you don't have the others, you're going to throw more of them, right? And I feel like it's the Anakin Skywalker to Padme meme. And you go, right?
You're gonna throw more of them, right?
Oh God. And so I'm just waiting for that. And that's actually why I'm still in, is because it's just at some point that should happen. And I will feel a lot better about it. But we're not there yet. And maybe I'm just wish casting too much about it. It's very frustrating, And I understand everybody listening right now being like, I don't know what to do. Tell me what to do. I'm like, can I ask him? Can anybody just please be like, Gavin?
I'm a full hold. And something I'd point out, who have we done so far? Landon ROUP, Gavin Williams, and
we did Jackson JOBE.
JOBE actually has the worst. If you're just looking at projections, JOBE has the worst projections across the board. And Gavin Williams and Landon ROUP both have projections for sub 4 ERAs by the projections I use for pitching.
I mean, I agree with that, because Gavin and ROUP should strike out a lot more batters. And
so they're a hold for all of me. But if you had to order them, and it was redraft and not keeper,
right?
I'm probably going Williams, ROUP, JOBE.
Honestly, that feels kind of right to me.
Yeah,
I maybe want to say ROUP over Gavin, just because Gavin still hasn't utilized his cutter and gotten strikes with it yet. Well, we've seen ROUP do what he normally does, and it works.
But Gavin's upside is a little bit higher than ROUP's, because it's like,
absolutely,
this is a thing that could dominate both sides, and he has all the tools.
Completely has the runway.
ROUP's always going to be like a little bit iffy against lefties. His best games will be ones
cutter needs to take off. Really, that's the next step for ROUP. And I'm surprised he hasn't thrown it that much against lefties. Even when he had lefties, he still didn't lean them into the two.
I know, and he told me he would.
I know. I was going to mention that too. So
he
We'll see what
doesn't
happens
quite
there.
fully trust it. It's a new pitch, and sometimes it just takes a while to fully trust it, which is what we're seeing with Williams too.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he threw it last year. He threw the cutter last year. It was right there. Okay. We're going to talk about Grant Holmes now because the real estate broker is maddening. And it's the same kind of thing for me. And this is really the theme of the podcast for me is when you have seen pitchers do a thing before and have a certain pitch and then not have it for, not throw it even, not even just like have it, not try to do it and it doesn't work. Do you expect them to be throwing it more and get it back later? Because that's the deal with the real estate broker, Grant Holmes. As his
And what's the
curveball
pitch?
used to be this 20-25% strike swing strike pitch.
And that was the pitch he grew up with.
Yeah, that's the one that was before the slider that Atlanta had to teach him.
Yeah.
And yesterday he only threw this against the Reds. Did not have a good start. 2 solo shots, made it a 4-run game in 5.1 innings. He only threw 10 of them, and for 5 out of 10 strikes. That was it.
That's weird. Stuff Plus and Location Plus say that both by stuff and location, they were his best pitches of those games.
And I don't understand why he doesn't throw them. So how long, he hasn't been utilizing it the entire season, really. What do you do with that,
I mean, he had seen the Dodgers before, and in the first time he saw them, he threw his curveball 28% of the time. So maybe, this is something that does come up when I talk to pitchers is, when I'm like, oh, you were talking to me about the cutter and you didn't throw it. And he's like, well, that day, they didn't have that many lefties. Or, Logan Webb said the same thing about his cutter. I've heard it about other pitches where it's like, oh, well, the game plan that day didn't, but you'll see more of it,
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if, he threw a bunch against the Dodgers. He sees the Dodgers again, and he's like, they're going to be expecting me to throw a bunch of curveballs, so I'm just going to throw a bunch of sliders instead. And it worked for that day. I will say that it's a little weird that now it's a 3-game stretch where he's barely got more than 10% curveball usage from the pitch that used to be his number one, basically.
Right. It's so strange. And I think when Grant Holmes was really successful last year, it was actually really slider curve dominating in tandem with the four-seamer being this, hey, I'm
kind
just here to
almost.
I'm not buying. I'm just looking at the books. Okay. Don't talk to me.
Yeah.
But the thing is that four-seamer has actually gotten better. He's coming in a little bit harder with it. It's improved. And I was like, oh my gosh, great. You get a better version of last year. This is going to be awesome. And that curve hasn't been there. And really, it is disheartening to see this for the Road Reds, which is, Max Meyer had 14 strikeouts against them, which is a good segue to our next guy. But we're going to talk about him after this break. So here's Max Meyer now. 14 strikeouts, amazing. The velocity jumps back up. It's awesome. 2 games since, velocity goes down a bit. The command of everything is just terrible. And walk us through your thought process of this, because would you say that more often than not, when a young guy like Max Meyer is doing something new and it's exciting, then loses that, are you banking that it returns, or that, that was just a moment?
It's really, really hard to say, because I think that generally your body is like used to certain patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've even seen this before where, they did something different and then just sort of slowly lost it over the course of the year. And I think this could be his body reacting and be like, nope, we remember how we used to move, and we're getting a little bit more tired, and, you're not fresh off a spring, and, we're just going to revert to the old movements that we've seen. Because in terms of his ride on this fastball, the last two really stick out. There's a little bit of some velocity upping and downing there a little bit. He was 95.6 that first game. He 95.7 on April 16th, and he hasn't averaged more than 95 since.
Yeah.
Also, just like the pitch type selection suggests that I don't know if this is like, he's seeing more righties in these games or whatever, but he like alternates sinker usage.
What do you mean by that?
15% against Pittsburgh, 6% against Atlanta, 20% against the Mets, 9% against the Diamondbacks, 13% against Cincinnati, 8% against Seattle, 23% against the Athletics. That's
I mean, I would imagine sinker is just getting reserved for right-handers. So my first instinct is that the lineups suggest it as such. So I'm actually going to take a quick look. Our player pages let us say lefty versus righty for pitches.
Scary lefties on the Athletics. I think of Lawrence Butler, Brent Rooker's a righty. Jacob
I'm
Wilson's
seeing
a
scattered. It's 43% against righties in 19, 17, 21, 33. Yeah, you're totally right. He's going back and forth on whether he wants to use that sinker or not.
And I think this is there's two things going on. One, your body is like is reverting on some level, and then two, like you don't have a long track record of success with this new thing. So like you have a game against Seattle, and you roll out the new playbook, the 2025 playbook, and you get blasted. You know how much of you is like, oh well, let's go back to what worked before. Like, you know what I mean? Like you don't have a Rolodex where you're like, another way of thinking about it is in the NBA, you have a move. You have to have a move if you want to be successful at scoring. But the most successful scorers have like 3 or 4 counter moves. They make a move. They say, oh, this guy's shading me to the left. Now I got the one where I, wheel around to the right. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And, I think some part of this is the growing process of being, what's my counter move? If they're all taking scoopy sinker swings, or they're all sitting on my 4-seam that's new and was doing so well, what do I do when they do that? And so to some extent, I'm happy that he's still throwing them all. Yeah. There's no pitch like you've seen people like introduce a pitch, throw it for like 2 or 3 games, and then you're like, where'd that pitch go? There's no pitch that he just started throwing that he stopped throwing. I like that. And the velo differences, I think, are sort of somewhat to be expected. I mean, he was hyped up, and this was like his new unveiling. So maybe he's just going to sit 94.8, 94.9 instead of 95.6. And I think that's still pretty good velo. And you just have to come back and be like, this guy is a guy who has 2 pretty good fastballs. Maybe not one of them is like, stand out awesome, but he has 2 pretty good fastballs, 2 pretty good sliders, and a pretty good changeup. So he's a little bit more wide mix and pretty good than he is, an ascendant star that's going to break out and win the Cy Young this year.
What's interesting is that our PLV for all 4-seamers thrown to right-handers from Max Meyer this year is terrible. 4.5, which is the threshold of what we call a bad pitch.
But he has to throw it sometimes so they don't just sit sinker on him all the time.
So the sinker itself ranks higher. This is all independent of each other, just so everyone's understanding here. Of a 5.10, which is great. I mean, you're really thrilled with that for a sinker. The slider, of course, is the bell of the ball is a 5.4 against righties, and then the sweeper is a 5.36. So it's really just to get to those sweepers and sliders. 4-seamer does do better against lefties, at least it's a 4.8, with the changeup being a 5.22. So this is the way I see it. I think you made a really good point that he's pitching still, and he's throwing all these pitches still, right? And yes, he had 2 bad games of really bad command. I don't think that the command is completely gone. I think that Max Meyer is still going to be an effective pitcher over time. Is this his moment of adversity? I mean, I talk about all the time of, I love the young guys when they have that moment of adversity, because that means when they come out of it, it's more stable. It's that second move they develop, the counterattack, right? The counter move. So he gets the White Sox next. And I feel like, Max Meyer, here you go. This is your confidence boost. This is the game that you should feel like you throw all the strikes, you do the normal thing, and it should go well, and you feel as if, okay, cool, I can adapt moving forward, right?
Then he's got a real problem start after that, because at Cubs before day off, that's probably a day game. So a day game at Wrigley on the 14th. With if you can know ahead of time if the wind's blowing in or out, then you'll know whether or not to pitch him. But I might almost not pitch him if I didn't know that, if it's like a weekly league and I had to decide ahead, because the Cubs offense is really great. And if the wind's blowing out, that could be a really tough one for him.
You want to take a wild guess on the team he faces after that? It's in Miami.
He's Tampa.
No. It's Cubs again.
Oh. That's annoying. That's not the best schedule. It's like 1 out
No,
of 3 I
it's like
chose,
even
but
if you get sucked back in with the White Sox, it's like, yeah, but you get the Cubs next twice. I mean, here's the thing. Okay,
yeah.
I'm going to give you a theoretical. If Max Meyer goes out and he looks great, what are you doing?
I'm still sitting him against the Cubs, and I'm
Okay.
hoping that he has a decent game against the Cubs, and I start him against the Cubs at home.
Yeah, that sounds right to me. So if you've already dropped him, don't feel so bad, because if it's it's okay that you wouldn't start him for the next 2 probably anyway. With Max Meyer, I do want to get
in
to
terms
the
of
Rays,
projections and where he
yeah.
fits in our group. Projections wise, he's more Job than ROUP and Williams. And I think that there's a sort of a grouping there where it's ROUP and Williams are the sub 4 guys. Max Meyer is like right at 4 basically, and then you've got Grant Holmes and who's the other guy?
I mean, there's Dustin May we haven't talked about.
Job, who's like more
Job,
of
yeah.
a 4-2 guy. I remain on. I think I remain sort of hewed to those projections. I still like Williams and ROUP the best, Meyer in the middle, and
it's a great show, by the way. Meyer in the middle, I love it.
And then I think I might have Job ahead of Holmes, just for the upside.
I think that you'd be able to tell quicker with Grant Holmes. Is the thing. Like Grant Holmes comes out with a curveball next time, you're like, oh, okay, all right, here we go. It might be a little bit more of a grind and more of a hipster relationship, headache-inducing pitcher stifling the entire roster with Jackson Jobe.
Yeah.
So, where does Dustin May fit in with that for you?
Well, so here's the thing with Dustin May that I think is kind of interesting. His arm slots dropped, and we've been talking about arm slots dropping. Lance Brodzowski has a good video out. Trevor May has a good video out. We had some barrels. We talked about it. And to some extent, that might be dropping because there's been some research that lower arm slots are healthier and can be just as effective given our knowledge of vertical approach angle. We talked about some of this on this podcast even. But the thing that happened with Dustin May is when he dropped his arm slot, his movement did not really change.
Yeah.
And so now his movement is more dead zone-y, given his arm slot. Like he moved his arm slot into his movement. So now, to some extent, when you look at Dustin May, you see like a Landon ROUP, right? And
that's interesting. I think Landon ROUP has a better sinker, breaker,
or maybe a bit like Landon ROUP with not as good of a breaking ball. You know?
So right.
It's just at 95 with the lower arm slot, it's just more conventional. He was. I know why he was reaching for a little bit up, because that gave him a 4-seam that made him ginger guard more than like a sidearmy kind of sinker sweeper guy. But and maybe dropping to his arm slot is going to keep him healthier, and he can be a healthy sinker sweeper guy. But it also made him more conventional, and that's why you see he's more of a ground ball guy with like some of the worst strikeout rates of his career. So
yeah, what's interesting to me is that you still get a really good flat attack angle, which means the 4-seamer can still be effective upstairs. As is the surprise one, especially if you're throwing tons of sinkers. We've seen bad 4-seamers succeed upstairs if you can do that without any of that benefit, because it's just a surprise pitch, right? The thing that I've really been annoyed about with Dustin May, well, it's 2 things. One is that he cannot spot the sinker recently at all.
Yeah, and that would never been his real strong
as opposed
point, right?
to like he used to do it at 96, 97.
Yeah,
is a big difference, and that's I think part of the reason why we're seeing this too. The other is that my narrative here is that you have one game where he's just so bad, and he's like, okay, I couldn't spot anything, I couldn't do anything. So then the next start comes, and he goes, I'm just gonna get the 2 boys together, which is
he's just sinker sweeper. He's also become a kind of a 2-pitch pitcher.
I just need to make sure that those are okay. And he kind of did, it wasn't the most amazing start, but he survived, for the most part. And I do wonder now about what comes next for him, because this is actually the part about Dustin May that I've been most excited about. He's never had a season with more than 10 starts. And there's something
already at 6.
Huge. Right. And it's something really huge for pitchers Are there
just to
what is
make it
development? You
through.
can't develop if you're just trying to get back to a baseline every time.
Yeah.
So I've been so excited for him throughout the year because we haven't seen Dustin May actually get that opportunity to mix the cauldron, really actually figure out how to be a better pitcher for a consistent full year.
But he's
And
to me, he's a
I have to think
two-pitch
he's going to be more than
sinker.
sink or sweep over time. It's like, cool, now the cutter comes in. Now they know how to use the
I
four seam.
guess, but he, like maybe, I don't know, maybe not. I mean, maybe this is
Right.
maybe this is all in an effort to pitch. Like, you might have this you might have an uncomfortable conversation with your agent before the season, right?
Mhm.
And the agent might be like, "Listen, you could go out there and dominate for 60 innings again, and somebody will give you X contract based on stuff. Your stuff will be good. If you go out there and you go 30 innings with anything close to what you've done so far, you'll get Y contract."
Right.
And so maybe his focus has just been like, this is my walk year. I need to pitch as far into the season as I can.
Mhm.
So I'm just going to pitch with my most comfortable pitches, my most comfortable arm slot. I'm going to step off the velo and I'm going to make it through the season. That type of pitcher, versus a Max Meyer who's like trying to announce himself with authority. I know I'm going to vibes reporting here.
Oh, this is what we do. We do vibes reporting, guys. What else can we do? You don't want us to just read off the
Well,
spreadsheets.
another way of saying is Max Meyer is throwing these pitches. Max Meyer is
right.
throwing the pitches that you want Dustin May to throw.
Yeah.
And they have some similarities in that they're kind of similar slot wise, and like they're trying to build an arsenal around a slider, around a sweepery type pitch and try to get more. And I would just say Max Meyer's showing you the arsenal that you want Dustin May to show.
Yeah.
So take Max Meyer over Dustin May is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I think I'm in agreement with you there. The last one I think is a really quick one. The two Rays guys, Shane Baz and Drew Rasmussen, who we both are like, these guys should be really good. They've both in tandem looked a little different. I'd say more so Baz has looked like more of a step back than Rasmussen. But then again, Rasmussen's had 3 straight starts now of just not really overwhelming as he had before. Are you concerned about these guys, or you're just saying, look, like their stuff's really good. Everyone's going to have these little rough patches. This shouldn't be something that's a problem in the long run.
I'm not actually concerned about Drew Rasmussen. I can move that one aside. I think he's probably my favorite pitcher we talked about today. So
Clearly, yes,
put him at the top of this list. Shane Baz, I'm going to struggle to place him. I'm going to, I think, place him, and this might be surprising, I think behind Meyer and in the rest of the group. There's some things he has in common with Jobe, which is kind of like, extended demonstration of turning stuff into results, right? And then the last bit, and I can't say that it leaps off the page why, but he's had below average stuff plus for 2 starts in a row now. Shane Baz
the last
has.
2 starts are really the ones that are concerning for Baz. The 4-seamer turned down to 96 and then finally came back to 97 plus on his last one.
But yeah, even in that start, his 4-seam was below average, but vertical movement wise, it was like an inch or 2 off. Like, is his release point changing? Like, what is changing about him?
It's a little weird the last few outings against the Yankees and against the Royals, and of course yesterday as well. It's been like 3 of the last 4 for Baz have been really strange.
I can't put my finger on it. I think there is some risk that he's settling in so kind of almost too pitchy.
Well, the changeup against lefties actually shows up a decent amount, and the slider's just so bad. That's a big thing too. The slider's really bad for Shane Baz right now. He should just not throw that pitch.
And that, I guess that's a warning sign for me in a way, because sliders are so important in this league.
Yeah,
and it's a little weird that he can do so well on this curveball, and then
the good news is that it is an 84 mile per hour curve. It's not like a 77 or 78 as we normally see with them. So it does feel like you can get away with a little bit more than a typical fastball curve kind of guy.
He's had a weird dip in spin rate.
There's something mental about the slider that he needs to fix. About
his
how he
release point is dropping.
So he's probably getting around it too much and not staying on top like a cutter. Honestly, if he thinks of it like do the Zach Gallen and think of it like a cutter and try and stay on top like a fastball, there might be something there to that.
Yeah, it could be hand placement rather than full on arm slot changing.
Mhm.
I don't think we can do average arm angle. Let me see how that looks like. Okay, his arm angle is dropping a little bit over the course of the season, and it's been a little more erratic than I would have expected. So, but you look back on other seasons and he's had, ups and downs with that as well on this level. So maybe it's just a young guy trying to figure out. I mean, we have this injury component too. Like maybe he's just trying to feel out what feels good. But I don't know. Like, what are his probables? I mean, where does he
Now,
rank in
moving
terms
forward
of
for Shane Baz, we have the
at Toronto?
he's going at Toronto, and then he's going at Miami. I'm going for both there easily.
Yeah, guess
I mean,
so.
the thing is, I hear that, and I'm like, yeah, I want that over Max Meyer for me personally. Oh yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think that the curve is still phenomenal. The
Oh,
fact that he
especially
pushed it
that
up
I
to
like that
97,
schedule
98.
over Max Meyer's schedule too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Max
oh yeah,
Meyer has
there's
like
that
that
too.
one nice game, and then you're like, oof, the
Yeah,
double
I
tap on
think
the
I
Cubs.
have more faith, I think, throughout the entire year of Shane Baz. Of just look again, kind of like Dustin May. You haven't had this full season before. I also trust the Rays to help more so than others to figure this out with him. And I know the park isn't favorable for George Steinbrenner Field, especially in the summer, which is a little worrisome. And maybe I'm not putting enough weight into that. That said, the fact that he's over 97 with his fastball, again, he got it back up to that, still has this really, really amazing curve.
God,
I
pitching
see
is
it as a
so
patch as
volatile,
opposed to
dude.
something that's just going to be a perennial issue for him.
It's so hard. I mean, you think about it. There's all these players that we've been talking about today. We like,
Yeah, I know.
and
I
they've
know.
all struggled.
Yeah.
But
It's
they've
so
also
weird.
all shown us some. There have been times this year where we were like, "Aha, see, told you
Yeah.
Shane Baz was gonna be great. Told you Landon Roop was gonna be great." And then the next start, you're like, "I didn't say anything." That's why I never do victory laps. I never do victory
You're never
laps. So I'm
supposed to
just
do
like,
victory laps. Absolutely.
next start is gonna. Somebody's gonna be like, "Oh yeah, and he's so good." I did one thing. There was like a pitcher list thing.
Yeah.
And I forget who he was. Oh, Jose Soriano, of course. The pitcher list was like, it did a Jose Soriano sinker, and I was like, I told y'all he was good, and then he immediately gave up 2 homers in the next 2 innings to Jose Ramirez, and I was just like,
Pitching Ninja, or is it actually us that put out that thing?
I forget, but I
We
was
call it
just
pitcher
like,
list thing. I'm like, I'm right here,
yeah, no, it was a pitching ninja, man. So.
Fusion. Let's keep that going.
Yeah,
But
no,
but no,
I just
right. Actually, I used to
never,
get gifts like
never,
that all the
never
time
do
on
that.
Twitter where I would put out a thing and then they go, yeah, but then what happened? I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah,
I don't, let me just celebrate this really cool pitch.
yeah,
Okay.
right.
Do you want me to say like, oh, congratulations at birth, you picked the right team today? Like, is that what you want? Awesome. Not the conversation I was expecting to have, but you know what? Sure. Yeah, let's just celebrate the filthy pitch, man.
Yeah.
But right, like victory laps, there's 2 sides of it of, hey, cool, let's identify why this was good, which is important to talk about. But yeah, it's really tough both ways. And it's also, we're also in this position where we need to be reactive and not reactive at the same time. And you can never be right. Like,
Yeah, you can.
you're dropping them too far. You're being too reactive. Oh man, he's been so bad. You're not dropping him. What's wrong with you? Like, what do we do? So it's really hard for us to discern. This is why we have these conversations, and obviously we're going to be wrong a lot about what other humans are going to do. I know, right? You can't predict that, but it is really fun to celebrate when we are hopeful that something will happen, and then that exact thing happens, and it's good. I don't know. I think that's a pretty fun thing for all of us to collectively celebrate, even if it won't be around forever. So yes, for Landon Roop being amazing after middle last year, you were like, yeah, I think Landon Roop's gonna be a thing. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? That's ridiculous. And all of a sudden, I'm like, yeah, Landon Roop is great, man. What's wrong with you? So we hope that this one helped sift through the really big question marks in the haze. For us all say, we don't know. Good luck. At the very least. At the very least, we helped identify what it is, and that's
and how we're thinking about it too. I think is the most important thing.
Exactly. We're not in the business of being right. We're in the business of good discussion, and that's why I constantly say. And I like to think that good process does make us more accurate, or at least react correctly more often than not. But ultimately, we don't throw the ball, and we hope that they throw it well. But when is your next edition of your rankings coming out?
I've been doing them kind of monthly, but I think I'll do it more like sort of 3 weekish. So I guess that would be
eventually we get that 1 week update, and I can't wait.
Week or two. Eventually, just have a rolling ticker.
It's the best.
Tomorrow
let's be honest. You put out a thing on Friday, and then like by Tuesday next week, like, nah, man.
Oh, I put it up, and there was injury news on some pitcher,
right?
Like a half hour later, and I was like, could you wait? Just tell us tomorrow that you're hurt. Don't tell me like right after.
They're about to announce to go. We just got word that Eno Sarris just put out his rankings. We can't.
So can we push tomorrow? Just wait a little bit.
Okay,
we'll push the announcement later.
We don't need that extra reliever today. No, we don't.
I did have a pitcher that told me that that Don Cooper, the White Sox pitching coach that was like so legendary, and that we used to write all these pieces about how do the White Sox keep their pitchers healthy. I had a pitcher tell me, yeah, he just told us not to report any injuries.
Oh my gosh.
So you have it,
well, this was a conversation like Pedro about like the Mets coach was like, your pitching take. He goes, no, I'm hurt.
Yeah, he's like, put some dirt on it, dude. Yeah.
And it's like, what?
They had Wilpon, the owner, would come down and tell players that they were in the lineup.
I don't. Okay. All right. See, this is the stuff you want to predict that, guys. Good luck.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Good luck.
And then who crushed a 12-pack of beers last night and who didn't?
Yeah, I got to know that one. This is makeup, the intagibles, though.
Yeah, that's right.
We need some people becoming bartenders and reporting into us. No. What can we look forward to if it's not your rankings within the next week?
I've got tomorrow. I've got buy low bats going up.
Nice.
Low bats.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anything about pitchers?
I'll do pitchers next week.
All right, fine. Whatever. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Craft This Pitching Podcast. On the behalf of our wonderful guest, Eno Sarris, thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Nick Pollack, and we'll talk about the craft of pitching again next week.